The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is proud to present our TaxFighter Award to a former provincial premier who delivered a decade of growth and prosperity. As Canada's most popular premier for nearly his entire tenure, he held firm to what's right even when others would not. He was the first politician to stand up against the federal carbon tax, he cut provincial taxes, and he inspired the people of his province to embrace a new spirit of growth and prosperity. The TaxFighter Award goes to Saskatchewan's 14th premier, the Honourable Brad Wall. Premier Wall deserves this award for many reasons, but more than anything, it's because he led the charge early in the fight against carbon taxes. Back in 2016, when Ottawa brought in the national carbon tax, he made it clear Saskatchewan would not stand for what he called a reckless and ill-conceived tax.
All taxes, to some extent, are an impediment to growth, but the carbon tax in particular, because it was a tax on the most productive parts of our economy, and also was really a tax on everything we grew, everything we produced, everything we moved to market, everything we bought in the stores.
He was the individual that saw the foolishness in this particular policy.
He was a lone voice among premiers. I sometimes wonder, would we have been able to even launch that campaign nationwide had Brad not stood there and fought from the very beginning?
We oppose a national carbon tax. This is not right for Saskatchewan, and may I say, I don't think it's right for the country right now.
Imposing a new tax when the economy can least afford it.
Today, everybody's against the carbon tax, that even the federal Liberals are against the carbon tax. But if we go back 15 years, it was a pretty quiet environment of people that were willing to say the carbon tax isn't the right policy for Canada.
Watching Brad Wall stand up as a provincial leader, as a premier of a province, to the federal government in opposition of the carbon tax, I would say long before it was the cool thing to do. I think really that just showed how good of a pulse Brad Wall had on the people he served.
And let us not go down the road with an ill-considered and reckless carbon tax.
Well, he was the lone voice among political leadership. He wasn't the lone voice among the public. I mean, people understood that this was not going to be a good idea.
His environment minister, who was a relatively new minister named Scott Moe, was in that now ill-fated meeting in Montreal where they had all the ministers of the environment cocooned in a room.
Ooh, goodness. Yes, that was a day. Catherine McKenna had informed us in that meeting that we were going to have a carbon tax and that the Prime Minister would be standing up that morning in the House of Commons and implementing a backstop for that carbon tax. So we either put it in or they would. I immediately texted my boss, Brad Wall, and I'm not so sure he was as surprised by it as I was. I went to work in the room and he went to work with his provincial counterparts, and that was really the start of expanding that last stand beyond just Saskatchewan and beyond just Brad Wall.
There were people from other provinces who listened when Brad Wall spoke. And I think it just caused people to pause for a minute and actually use some critical thought about, well, what's he saying?
I think he's the greatest communicator that Canadian politics has seen, certainly in this generation and maybe ever. He was able to use his talent of being able to communicate and resonate with the Saskatchewan people, but also Canadians.
He always stuck to his principles, that we want lower taxes, we want smaller government, and nothing about the consumer carbon tax represented that.
He was the minority voice in the early days, but it was the right thing to do. If it's the right thing to do, you need to have the courage to do that.
Premier Brad Wall fought high taxes right here at home. In 2008, his government delivered the largest tax cut in Saskatchewan history by raising the personal exemption by $4,000 and the child tax credit by $2,000. That removed 80,000 people from provincial tax rolls. In 2011, he cut taxes again, ensuring a family of four paid no provincial income tax on their first $46,000 of earnings, the highest threshold in Canada at the time. He also slashed property taxes, cutting and capping provincial education rates, and he backed small businesses, raising the income threshold to $600,000, once again the highest in the nation.
Well, one of the first things he did when he came into office in 2007, shortly after that, delivered the largest income tax reduction in Saskatchewan history.
Today I'm announcing the largest permanent single-year income tax reduction in the history of our province.
And he did it by raising the basic personal exemption. That's the low end of our tax system. So that means everyone benefited, but it proportionally benefited low-income people.
On a consistent basis where there was fiscal room, the first place that the Wall government would look was, can we leave more money in the pockets of the people of Saskatchewan?
It's meant lower taxes for everyone in this province, for small businessmen and women, for those who own homes or those who farm. It's meant tax relief for families. 114,000 low-income Saskatchewan people no longer pay any provincial tax at all because of the changes we've made, because of what growth can provide for a province.
Brad was adamant that our team look at how do we ensure that these kind of tax breaks go on forever. Those are all indexed and they will rise according to inflation.
Some of the tax cuts that I think were most impactful to the people of Saskatchewan were in the first couple of years, municipal property tax. Fundamental changes were made to save the taxpayers of Saskatchewan tens of millions of dollars a year.
Wall also worked to make government smaller and more efficient. By cutting red tape, he saved taxpayers nearly $90 million in just 3 years. He ended the government's liquor monopoly, modernizing alcohol laws. He privatized the Information Services Corporation, which went on to become a profitable, publicly traded company.
Brad Wall made red tape reduction a priority. It's not just about the tax cut for small business, it's also about the costs of doing business.
And we wanted to ensure that the developers would come here. It is not, government's place to be developing the industries. It's for government to create the environment whereby we attract the developers and the investors, and they do those expenditures.
Brad's view was that there is no government money or government dollars, they're tax dollars. And one of the examples of things that just didn't make sense is the taxpayers of Saskatchewan were subsidizing a very unprofitable and inefficient bus company. The politics were challenging to shut down a Crown corporation, but if it was the right thing to do, Brad pushed to make the cuts where they needed to be, and the bus company was one of the early, obvious, difficult decisions that were made.
One of the things that he did was we early on privatized a company called TaxFighter, a fertilizer company that the government really didn't need to own. Got about $200 million out of that, but didn't just put that into general revenue, took every dollar from that and put it towards building the new children's hospital, the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital that exists today in Saskatoon. And that's just one example of how you use growth and a pro-business agenda to improve the quality of life for everyone in Saskatchewan.
Well, it shifted Saskatchewan and the way people think about our public services because it proved that life wouldn't fall apart.
All of these efforts supported the top priority of his government, growth. Perhaps Premier Brad Wall's greatest legacy is the attitude shift he sparked in a province that too often sold itself short. For more than 50 years before Brad Wall's arrival, Saskatchewan had some of the worst economic and job creation records in the country. Every year, young people left the province looking for jobs and opportunities. Premier Wall's leadership changed all of that through a positive vision of a new Saskatchewan.
I loved one of Brad's favorite statements. It was, we have to finish the statement. We need growth, we need businesses to make money so that we can help those who need our support. That's always finishing the sentence.
Remember this, ladies and gentlemen, our growth agenda has never been really about growth. That's not the end goal. The end goal for growth in this province has always been quality of life.
I know one of the things that Brad was really proud of was the supports for people with intellectual disabilities.
It was our government that implemented SAID, the Saskatchewan Assured Income for the Disabled program, to replace welfare and then increase those amounts. And we have built group home spaces for people with intellectual disabilities. We will work every day as government, ladies and gentlemen, to create the kind of economy that will support government efforts in this regard, that can lift up people who are most vulnerable among us.
If you have a growing economy, you have a strong economy, you have people wanting to stay and contribute to that economy by growing the population, ensuring people are working and that people are thriving, you have the ability to lower taxes for every individual person and still invest in the programs like health and education that people rely on.
Today in Saskatchewan, ladies and gentlemen, we're on the verge of greatness, I believe. We're on the verge of an economic breakthrough, a chance to convert some momentum into lasting prosperity. We're on the verge of Saskatchewan taking its rightful place at the vanguard of this country, leading the West and leading Canada.
To have a growth in the economy, you have to have workers. And it was very common in the early 2000s that, students graduating from a grade 12 class, many of them were leaving the province.
I graduated high school in the early 90s, and a lot of folks that I graduated with don't live in Saskatchewan and left immediately after high school.
Me and my friends, when we graduated high school, we'd receive luggage from our families, receive cell phones, and we'd be on our way to a newfound life in Calgary or Edmonton, Alberta.
Not too many years ago, people were leaving this province by the droves. There seemed to be tax hikes in every budget, and Saskatchewan was not a have province. It's not that way anymore, thanks to the people.
So the idea that you can have pride in a province, participate in a stronger economy, but do it by staying was fundamental.
He was a turning point for Saskatchewan. He really inspired the province to believe that the sky was the limit. They could work hard and achieve their dreams and be second to no one.
I really, truly believe that the most important thing that Brad Wall did as Premier was shift the attitude of the entire province of Saskatchewan and their people.
Energy and Saskatchewan, positivity and Saskatchewan, a good vibe in Saskatchewan, growth in Saskatchewan.
He, through his strong leadership, made Saskatchewan the place to be when previously it was a place that people were from.
The hope beats fear always. The opportunity to let people believe in themselves and in the province, that was just a new feeling.
He reflected what people already intuitively knew and what they believed. So they saw themselves reflected in him. And all of a sudden, we were able to pull our shoulders back and stand a little taller. And he gave us hope because he had hope.
Who won the election in Saskatchewan? Tell them this. Tell them good ideas won the election. Tell them common sense won the election tonight. Tell them that a positive vision for our future won the election. Tell them that those who believe that our best days are yet ahead for us in Saskatchewan, tell them that they won the election. If someone calls you tonight and asks who won the election in Saskatchewan, tell them that hope won this election. Because tonight in our province, tonight in the province of Saskatchewan, hope beats fear. Thank you.
That was the hope for Saskatchewan that he brought in 2007. And I think we can all agree he certainly was able to deliver on it to a degree now that Saskatchewan people expect that kind of investment moving forward. It's a great change.
The only day better than today in Saskatchewan is tomorrow in Saskatchewan. May God bless our province.
Premier Brad Wall is a leader that embodied a smart agenda of lower taxes, smaller government, and standing up for what's right. He was the first Canadian politician to fight the now-defeated carbon tax, and he inspired a new spirit of prosperity in Saskatchewan, one that delivered a decade of growth and opportunity that continues today. Premier Brad Wall, congratulations on winning the TaxFighter Award.